Awesome. Okay, so I'm thrilled to introduce Jason JMan Petrunik, born and raised in Ottawa. He's an Ottawa native. Me too. He spent 17 years in radio as an announcer at 106.9 The Bear, 101.9 Dog FM, and most recently Rebel 101.7. Roughly two-thirds of his radio career, he was introduced, roughly.
You know what, Liz?
Yes.
I don't mind just even taking over there for you because I put some of that into my little speech, so don't worry about it.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So everyone, thank you for having me here to speak with you. It's the most amount of ladies I've been around in quite some time with COVID, so this is fantastic. Have all your undivided attention, I hope. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before we do get started. Yes, born and raised in Ottawa, struggled in high school. I ended up working at Tucker's Marketplace, which is now closed due to COVID. And it was the worst job in my life, but it was also one of my best experiences. Because of working that job, I decided that it was really important that I went to school. So I went to college for radio broadcasting, and I graduated in 2000. I started off at the Bear, went to the Ottawa Valley for 4 years, and did something I thought I would never do, which was actually in my own little mission statement to myself, is that I didn't want to work country and I didn't want to be in a small city. And I ended up being in Pembroke working at a country music station. Go figure. But for the best years of my life, that's when I got started into personal development. And yes, I worked at Dog FM and Rebel 101.7 as well. When I was working at Dog FM, right in the middle of my radio days, I found network marketing. I excelled at it. I was featured on corporate calls, segments, corporate blogs, all that kind of stuff. I was making pretty good money. And most importantly, really focusing on my personal development, which is large in direct sales and home-based business, as I heard right here with the essential oils, etc. That was really a life changer for me. Another life-changing event would be losing my job 10 years ago. I got sat down at a table my first day back from vacation, and they told me that my services weren't necessary anymore. And they were going a different direction. And right then and there, I decided to throw away the idea of that guaranteed paycheck. And I was going to put that guarantee on me. And I went full-time into network marketing. Since then, I've gone out to contract my marketing services. I run my own small dog sitting company, as Penny said earlier. I freelance MC gigs. I got into income properties, invested into trade shows called Showcase, which is a 3-day showcase in Petawawa that does anywhere from 130 to 150 vendors and 10,000 people through the doors in those 3 days. And then, of course, I'm done with radio, but that doesn't mean that I can't take my own options and further my broadcasting career with my Launchpad podcast, which happens each and every Monday. Well, almost every. Someone is also talking about consistency. I could be a little bit better with that sometimes too. So doing my podcast Monday at 7 o'clock and mainly focusing on entrepreneurs. And right now, basically helping people try and navigate through these COVID times. So basically, I call it the COVID diaries. So I'm here to talk to you about staying positive during challenging times. I have a few personal experiences that I'd like to share with you that I have not shared with many other people. I don't know what it is, but I just felt compelled to be able to go a little bit deeper with you. Maybe that had something to do with Penny as well, knowing what type of person that she is. So the last 5 years have been difficult, to say the least. My dog died, had a girlfriend that I was dating that passed away. My mother, who meant more than anything else to me on the planet, also passed away from pancreatic cancer 1 week before my birthday. In fact, her funeral was on my birthday, and it was also going to be my first day at a new radio station, Rebel 101.7. So I literally left the funeral, went over the Hunt Club Bridge to introduce myself to a new rock station in Ottawa. A surreal experience. And I'd have to say that, you know, my personal development, as well as being a little bit on autopilot, most definitely helped that process. But positivity isn't always easy. It's a choice. So I'm going to run over 3 topics this evening. Number 1 is going to be positive relationship with loss. The second is going to be positive relationship with your circumstances. And lastly, it's going to be positive relationship with people. So we'll start with positive relationship with loss. And to do that, I'd like to share a chapter of my book that I'm writing about my mother called Lessons from the Fourth Grade. She was a career fourth grade teacher. It's a personal development book based on the lessons she taught me, things like being kind, being graceful, the power of perspective, and so on. The common sense practices that we don't always put into play. So the chapter that I'm going to read for you is called Smile. It's the first chapter in the book and probably the most powerful. Bear with me. So it starts with a psalm. Look away from me, that I may smile again before I depart and am no more. It's so often you hear the cliche in regards to smiles, like they're free, or how many muscles it takes to frown opposed to turning it upside down. It sounds simple enough to do, yet many of us fail to realize how rarely we smile when we're out and about. More so, smile at people that aren't in our social circles, aka strangers. We're slowly becoming a society that's recessing in how we interact with our social surroundings, becoming far too comfortable with emoticons on social medias, a mere shadow of the real thing. Outside of the sound of my mother's loving laughter, there's nothing I'll miss more than her genuine smile. She smiled big, she smiled with passion, and she smiled a lot. You'd think staring cancer in the face would diminish that dental work, but she would smile in the face of cancer too. I believe it was 3 days after my mother was diagnosed with cancer. She was already weak. In fact, I remember having to help her up the stairs of the doctor's office. She had pancreatic cancer and it was creating pressure on her back. We slowly ascend to the top of the stairs. My mother exhausted as we make our way to reception, where we await the appointment with her family physician to discuss the cancer, the realities of her current situation, and figuring out her optimistic baby steps to follow. I'll never forget sitting there nervous, making small talk, doing anything I could do to keep my mind and my mother's mind away from the harsh reality that she had cancer, it had spread, and as much as I wanted to deny it and pray on a miracle, the likelihood of hearing anything remotely close to good news was not going to be on the agenda. I remember others in the room, nameless faces, wondering why they were there. Could they be facing the same fate? Were they really sick like her? And if they shared the same anxiousness? Here and there, the doctor's assistant, a gatekeeper, would open the door to deliver the name of the next patient. I remember sitting there with my mommy, wishing that I wasn't, hoping I wouldn't have to hear her name. Directly across from us was a mother and child. My mother adored children. She was a career fourth grade teacher. She loved all kids, the ones she taught, the ones she raised, all the children in her family, and those she would catch a glimpse of in doctors' offices. This child in particular was jumping all over the chairs and tables like a monkey on mute, a real busybody, but actually quite quiet. For whatever reason, at one point, he stopped, and his eyes connected with my mother's. And when that happened, my mother engaged with her one of her classic two-eyed blinks like this, because she couldn't blink worth shit. She quickly followed it with the most powerful tool in her arsenal, that $1 million smile. Witnessing that and everything around me just evaporated. It was just this child and my mom in a room. I was simply a fly on the wall. I sat there speechless, and for a split second, the woman I love more than life itself didn't have cancer anymore. Here's something you and I both know. There are good days and days that don't live up to that good day expectation. But for the most part, there's usually reason to smile. My mother, freshly diagnosed with cancer and deteriorating, losing the ability to walk on her own, feed herself, go to the bathroom, and wash herself properly, all while awaiting quite possibly the worst conversation of her life, yet still had it in her to share a smile, even though inside she was dying. You often hear of the light at the end of the tunnel, or the lack thereof. Some people see the light, some people don't. And when that happens, they bury themselves in that cylinder of dirt, and others keep on digging until they see that light. And that was my mother. If a dying woman can find the fight to take a frown and turn it upside down, what's happening in your life that you can't find a few seconds to live in that moment and build from there? To start digging your own escape from whatever might be burying you. Sometimes it's nothing more than a moment of clarity, 17 muscles, and a minute of mindfulness that will last a lifetime. So obviously, I learned a lot from that lesson. And The great thing with parents is that they give you two gifts. Number one is that they give you life and they bring you into this world. And then through my experience in my mother's passing, as painful as it was in those moments and through those years, and I still have difficult days, it forced me, it pushed me into change. And even if you had a bad relationship with your parent, it's not to say that it can't do the same thing to where you'd want to be a better parent, where you'd want to show up at all the baseball games, or you'd want to be at all the soccer games or not miss the recital. In losing my mom, there were things that probably would have just not necessarily happened organically. But because of her passing, the gift of being able to love better, love stronger, it humbled me, which is incredibly important. That was a massive life lesson for me. It's made me a better person. I used it as a tool. And I always use the example of Star Wars, oddly enough. And I don't want to do any spoilers. If you haven't seen Star Wars, there is a character named Obi-Wan Kenobi. And of course, Darth Vader, the ultimate good versus evil. And there's this one point in the movie where Obi-Wan is battling with Darth Vader, and he just has a moment of clarity, and he basically looks like he's praying. And he's struck down by Darth Vader. And Obi-Wan knows, even though it's going to cause Luke a lot of pain for him to be out of his life, that he's going to be much stronger of a life force. And I'd always love to sit down with George Lucas and be able to talk about that a little bit deeper, because it's really quite fascinating. So change in life can be chosen, but oftentimes it's forced upon us, but we still have the free will to decide where that change takes us. And in one of my previous companies, I had the chance to talk on stage for a brand new rank. And I'm sure that a lot of you think, I'm almost positive just hearing how you guys were introducing yourselves with the beginning of this broadcast, that there are just some moments that are meant to be. They're created, but they're meant to be. And I truly believe that I manifested this moment where I hit one of the top ranks in that company, and one of the first people to do it, and it was called Silver Elite. And spontaneously came out with this analogy of the silver lining around a cloud. And, your mom passed away, or you crashed your vehicle, or you lost your job, and they go, the silver lining. And sometimes I don't want to hear it. But when I put it within this perspective, it made a lot more sense to me, is that some things, they're just not good. They're just not good. So you have to do your best to try to put that silver lining or that spin on it, like they would do in the news, or what you do when you're pivoting in your business. It's not what you want, but you try to put a positive spin on it. And that silver lining doesn't always appear on its own. Sometimes you have to grab the marker and you have to trace the outline of that cloud. Sometimes your hands are going to hurt. Sometimes you're going to stop. Sometimes you'll walk away from it. You'll come back. But ultimately, if you stick with it and you find that higher perspective, again, it will push you forward. And I decided to let that experience grow me instead of defeat me. I created a positive relationship with that loss. Number 2, and this is going to be a lot easier because I get to play a 3-minute video. Sweet. God bless technology. To illustrate this lesson with a positive relationship with circumstance, I'm going to play a video that I recorded not that long ago, and here's the setup. It's cold here in Canada. I'm on my way to Miami for the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. I can't wait to get there. My mouth is watering, but the weather is horrendous. I'm stuck in Ottawa. My flights are delayed. I finally get to Toronto. I get delayed right there. I lose a full day of vacation, and I'm hanging out in the airport for about 24 hours. I spend the night there. I'm sleeping next to some guy that is literally picking something out of his toes and putting it in his mouth. I don't even know what that's about. But anyway, you know what? Everyone has their thing. And I didn't even say a word. I'm just going to let him enjoy his moment. So maybe that was a little too much information. So I'm going to bring you over the video, and then I'll jump back in on the back end. Hey, how you doing there, Facebook Live? I am stuck in an airport. but I'm going to share something with you that I just recently learned and put into practice, like a little brain hack, which I absolutely love. But it will take some time and effort. It will take some work. Anyways, this is how my day started. Went to the airport. I was supposed to leave at 10, didn't leave till about 12. Then delays. I end up in Toronto. I'm supposed to catch a 2 p.m. flight. That doesn't happen. Now I'm waiting here till 7:45 before I fly to Atlanta now. And then something like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, I fly to Miami, where I'm going to be at South Beach, baby. So here's the practice that I put into play. I had to go to customer service, right? And I had to rebook, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be atrocious. There was a lineup of maybe about 80 people. I decide that I'm going to call the customer service line. Now I had to wait about 45 minutes, at least for that. The whole process took about an hour and a half, and I was only one person away from actually being at the kiosk. So really cool. So this book that I'm reading called Happiness is a Choice, which is a book that absolutely transformed my life many, many years ago, has this little practice, and it sounds silly. Okay, you're not going to like this, but where you can find ways to be happy about things that suck, right? So what I told myself when I was waiting in line, and the fact that I'm going to lose a whole day in Miami because I was supposed to be there earlier this afternoon, is that I'm just going to be happy that my flight is delayed and everything went poopy, because it gives me the ability to practice my patience. Sounds silly. I know. And right away, it didn't work, right? But I stayed at it. And I started just having conversations with people around me. And then I really took it as an opportunity to teach myself to be happy about things that generally I wouldn't be all that happy about. Because obviously, it's really happy to be happy about things that make you happy. Can you imagine what your life would look like if you could start being happy about the things that don't necessarily make you all that happy? That would make you happy all the time. And happiness is a choice. It really does work that way. So I'm going to continue to practice, and I'm going to let you know how this works as I continue to move forward with this explosion of mind space. And if you're looking for a good read, Happiness is a Choice by Barry Neil Kaufman. I hope that it brings you only half of the paradigm shifts that it gave me when I read this book many, many years ago. So common sense, tells a lot of stories to explain exactly how you put these practices into play, and they've been absolutely invaluable to me. So I'm going to get back to work, no more playing around on live, but I did want to share that with you while it was on the top of my head. You take care, be well, love simply because you can, and hopefully next time you see this face, it's going to be in Miami. You take care. All right, so there we go. And Barry Neil Kaufman, I've actually reached out on Facebook twice to that gentleman, and both times he's replied about 10 years apart, which is really amazing. Great guy. So I'm going to finish off with lesson number 3, positive relationship with people. And I'm going to keep it brief because I truly believe it's the easiest out of all these lessons. It's not that difficult to be kind to one another, you know? And it's one simple step as far as I'm concerned. And there's a lot of divisiveness there on social media. That'd be a great example. Right now, we're dealing with a lot of politics. We're dealing with COVID. We're dealing with race relations with Floyd. And it's just a lot of personal opinion. And there are a lot of conflicting views, obviously, because we all have different experiences in life. Like, it's blatantly obvious to me right now that I have the best tan going on in here. I'm half St. Lucian, and I'm also the only male, right? Like, that's just the reality of this situation. So what I urge everyone here to do is to improve the relationship with people, whether it be their family, loved ones, friends, strangers, walking on the street, is to simply practice empathy. Instead of accusations, ask questions. Ask yourself, what is this person trying to teach me? What can I learn from this person? What can I learn from this situation that's presenting itself as we manifested it to begin with, right? So if we just took a moment to truly see another person's perspective opposed to allowing it to clash with your own, we'd have far less conflict, better communication skills, learn a lot more about people and those that we care about, which are our relationships, which we would also improve, and all things that lead to a much more peaceful and prosperous existence for all. So again, thank you very much for having me here. It was an absolute blast to let me impart whatever amount of wisdom that possibly I left within your soul. And if there's one word that you think of that I said consciously or unconsciously over the last 25 minutes or so and adds value to your life, then that means the absolute world to me, and I would never have to know.
Hey, this is amazing. I love your video.
Thank you.
Facebook Live for sure. And very grateful. Any of you ladies have any questions for Jason? Don't be shy now.
What's the name of the book?
It's going to be called Lessons from the Fourth Grade, because she was a career fourth grade teacher. And feel free to ask any questions about my mother and her passing or anything of that nature. I don't know how many people. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I have a question whenever you're finished.
Sure. Go. No, please.
Oh, okay. So, as a male who is interested in self-improvement, which is lovely and refreshing, why do you think other males aren't as mindful of themselves and diving into that realm of reflection and self-improvement? And maybe how can we help males get into that space?
How feminist. No, I'm kidding. What is she trying to teach me? What is Elizabeth trying to teach me? No, that's a very good question. And I mean, obviously that's your reality. I've been very fortunate that a lot of people in my circle, within my home-based businesses and things of that nature, have been male. I know that generally, like the top performers in MLM, and a lot of MLM happens to be female driven. And I also know that I've attracted a lot of people to my business based on just my philosophy alone, which is big on personal development. I think where females are a little bit more malleable to change, and I don't know if it has something to do with even the fact that you can have a child. That is the most insurmountable amount of change that I can think of a person going through. Like, you have to accept that there's going to be all these changes in your life. A guy really doesn't have to do that much, right? And I think just for men, they're just a little bit more set in their ways. And I don't think society has really pressed them all that much to go any further. And I think that shows up in just advantages through prejudice, which is why women don't earn as much as men still. They don't get as many promotions. You know, I'm always surprised when I'm talking to some females, and when I do deal with race a little bit here and there, and they're not kind of like on the race bandwagon, because it's an ism, just like a sexism that will hold females back. It's also a civil rights issue. And I think maybe it comes from there. And plus, I think you have to persevere through a lot more than just the average male. I don't know why women aren't totally running the world. And I say that regularly. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. And I think that's why it's held on to so tightly, is that the people in power, those that know, men, they don't want to lose the reins for sure.
Thank you. Just because with what I do, it's empowering parents, and it's all mothers that are stepping forward and wanting to take that step. And eventually I want to get the dads in there too. And I don't know.
Right.
You know.
May I offer a suggestion?
I would love it.
How much of your marketing is focused towards men?
Well, when I launched this, it was only females that were interested. And what I felt, because I had taken a course a couple of years back, and it was a bunch of females. And what she decided is all of us females were upping our level. Hold on, Craig, can you please? We're upping our level as far as our ability to interact with our kids. So she ended up creating a course for the men, for the husbands, so we all could be on the same page. And she brought beer, and the guys just loved it. And,
right.
It was great. And so I want to, because, you know, I really want parents to be on the same level. And if these mothers are growing, the dads, you know, helping the dads grow too.
Right. You know what? I just have to say, from a man's perspective, if I just had to take a shot and I don't know and I have no background, and it might sound a little bit silly and maybe a little bit childish, but just over celebrate the man a little bit. You know what I mean? You got to go. It's a behavior that you're trying to create. No different than if you're good at the store, you know, you're going to get the ice cream. If you lose your shit in the grocery aisle, you know, you're not going to get anything. And so you want to try it and condition. And if you find that, you know, for the most part, it's men that don't want to join in, then what can you do to sweeten the pot? And maybe do your best to get on a phone call, you know, with the male and the female. Just do whatever you can to get him on the phone, and just have your script, or possibly you know something about him through the wife already, and just praise him. Like, you know, so whisper criticism, scream praise. And maybe that will help.
No, thank you. That's definitely, and you opened that door, because I was honestly shutting the door off to men, because I'm like, no one's stepping up, but you gave me inspiration to not shut that door and to open it up just in a different way. Thank you.
Good. No problem.
Yvonne,
It's funny. Sorry, it's funny, Jason, that you talk about, you know, you're here with all these women, and this is one of our challenges at Graduate, is we haven't been able to attract the men to participate in doing the monthly sessions with us. And so that's one of the challenges so thank you for your answer, and from a male perspective, because that might help us to be able to attract more men to participate, because we want the balance of both opinions of both and perspectives of both men and women to help us evolve in our life and in business. So.
Right. Men are really simple. I'm so simple. I'm dumb. No, it doesn't take too much. It doesn't take too much to get me going down a certain path.
A male friend of mine once said to me, Liz, you know what? Men need to be needed. And
Right.
I feel they're needed. So do you feel that's probably some of that marketing kind of thing? We need your...
Yeah, I'll share something that's slightly chauvinistic, but please understand that it comes from a good place. So I have been single for quite some time right now. And when people will ask me, like, what are you looking for in a woman? And I guess it's a little traditional, and maybe it's because it's a little bit my mom, who's from another generation. And it was something along the lines of just sometimes knowing when to let me win. You know what I mean? You like, just let me have one. Just, you can shut me down. Just like, yeah, Jason, okay, sure. And just like exit the room, opposed to, you know, always being challenged. So it's not to say that I don't want a strong woman. I most definitely want a strong woman, and they're to be revered. But sometimes just to have the wherewithal with me to know when to maybe just give me a little. And I think that kind of speaks on the same thing in regards to wanting to bring people in, men, that, and you want to make them feel special. So what do you give them a little bit of a rub, you give them the special treatment and make them feel good. And we're like, yeah, give them the camping trip.
If I may speak, Elizabeth, as I was a teacher for 32 years, so, you know, you're dealing with parents all of the time. And also I have 2 nieces who have autistic children, so I've dealt with their husbands. Much as I hate to say it, with a lot of fathers, there's a sense of guilt and even sometimes shame that their child is, you know, as they put it, not normal. So they back away. They back away because they're embarrassed. They back away sometimes because they're ashamed, and they back away because they just don't know how to handle it. They really don't. And I think a lot of the marketing that has to be done, and it's a societal thing as well. You know, men have to be strong. Men aren't supposed to show their emotions, that kind of thing. I think what's very, very important, and I think maybe Penny Lee said it, or maybe Jason, no, I think it was Liz actually, that they need to know that they are needed. And I think that's where you need to focus your attention on for the fathers is that we need you to step in here. And it's very difficult not to say you need to do, you need to be there, you need to step up to the plate, you need to help your wife. It's, you know what, we're struggling here. We need you to help us. What do you think you can bring to the plate? What do you think you could do for us to make this work a little bit better? And it's to let them bring the thoughts and the ideas as to what they might have to offer. Because I'm sure those fathers are sitting back there thinking, I wish I could, if only this, if only that. But it's a societal thing. Mom takes care of the kids most of the time. But again, there's that whole ego that gets in the way. And I think, as Jason said, you have to build that ego. You have to make them feel that they are just as important, that they can be just as helpful, that they can. This is an older lady talking.
I think that's a great perspective.
And also there's, and I'm thinking of our superintendent here, and this is a whole sort of different story, but sort of fits in at the same time. Different culture, very aggressive, very domineering, all of those features that come with certain cultures where, you know, the woman gets told what to do, how to do it, and when, and you don't dare tell me what to do. And as the condo board president, it was like, not going to work that way, buddy. It's taken me 8 years. But he has said several times, thank you for persisting and teaching me that the way I was addressing people and even the tone of, I used to say to him, like, excuse me, start that again on a different tone, the teacher in me. But he has said several times, thank you for teaching me. And I think that's what the men need. They need to be taught that they are needed and how to help. They don't know. I'll shut up now.
Jason, I just wanted to ask you, for the last year that I spent with my mom taking care of her while she was in the hospital and everything else, I seem to have found that for me that was a really intense time to really learn a lot about her and understand some things and get a few ahas, which was kind of crazy because I was close to my home anyway. Did you find that for yourself, or did you always have that close connection and always had that?
I always had a close connection with my mom. I told her all the time how much like I loved her profusely. And like, if I were to lose you, you have no idea. And she'd say, oh, Jason, stop it. I'm like, no, you have no idea. Like, it'd bring me to tears sometimes. It'd be pretty intense. And surprisingly enough, because she went from being well to not well very quickly. It was about a 4-week period. And I was living with her maybe for the last 3. I assume that she was living with pancreatic cancer for a year, just wasn't incredibly symptomatic. And then when it hit, it just went downhill really quickly. And it was just incredibly quiet, a very comfortable quiet. You would think that you would take all that time to just say, I love you every second, and I don't want you to go. It's just, there's an understanding, I think, is that she doesn't want me to despair any more than I already am, because she knows that she's going to leave me. And by me professing more than I usually would might make her feel guilty, so I don't do that. It's just the fact that I'm there, that I showed up big. My sister is a very inconsistent person and unreliable, and she showed up big. And I think that's really what matters, you know, in my particular case anyways, is that we both showed up big when it mattered most. And then to even take it one step further, you know, when she passed away, you know, my sister did the makeup, my sister picked the clothes, my sister did the hair, and I was there with her. And, you know, we kind of asked how many people do this. And the lady that worked at the funeral home says, like, you know, next to nobody does that. Right. But it was just from beginning to end. And my sister has a PSW background to where at one point she was doing great and being resourceful and looking for excess funds or whatnot, or help that we could have come into the house if anything happened, with mom to where we couldn't handle it. And I remember saying to Jana, and my mom saying this on the phone, she's talking to her aunt, proud Jamaican lady. And, and she's talking to her sister, and she says, yeah, well, Jana was looking for, some people to take care of me. And then Jason said, nobody's touching mom until we can't do any, that kind of thing. She was so thrilled that, we were willing to go above and beyond. And so I was able to, there's gems like that now that I remember, and I can smile and laugh about that, maybe even up to, 6 months to a year ago, I just couldn't find it in myself. It was too painful. But it's a process, and it's different for everybody. The way that you grieve, I'm sure, can be different than how I grieve.
Well, yeah, and I find I was really blessed because we had so many great conversations. My mother never talked about herself when we were growing up. We would ask questions, she would know. But that year there's 3 of us kids, and I was the one kind of doing most of the stuff. But having conversations that I never thought we would ever have, because she was just always so closed off before. And
right.
I was really blessed to have that time with her. So it was just, it was nice to have us. So I was just wondering if, if you had to kind of
Thanks for sharing. It's, it's a real bizarre thing, losing a parent. I don't think that, there's nothing else like it. And sometimes, I truly believe it's just designed to be that way. Yet what's the purpose of loss is what somebody kind of has to ask. There's a purpose, an action and a reaction, right? So they're born, and then the reaction is that eventually one day they have to be gone. And of course, to celebrate life and to give life and all those things are so fantastic. But it's only in loss. It's one of the few things that can really propel people forward, that can take people from almost like reeling backwards and doing something completely different in their life, or wanting to become a world traveler. I really feel sorry for the people that get stuck in their pain, because that was me for an incredibly long time. And I'll just always say, now that I've lost a parent, is that now I know how to address somebody else that has also lost a parent. I used to say some dumb things that I was just trying to be a good person, opposed to, something simple like, if that were to happen to you and you were my friend Liz, I'd say, Liz, I think it's horrible what happened. You're probably getting inundated with so many messages. Just know that I'm here. I don't even have to say a word, but if you just need an ear, I'll sit there and I'll listen. I'll listen for hours if that's what you need.
Yeah. What I really found, what I was expecting, because we knew she was getting ill. She didn't take care of herself at all. And I thought, oh my God, I'm just going to lose it. But it was not like that at all. So what I was expecting to feel was completely different, which I'm grateful for. Right. But yeah.
Well, you showed up big. That's something to celebrate, big time. That's a huge burden that was on your mother's shoulders that you bared on your own. And it's just I think that's a lovely story. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Jason, I thank you very much. This has been an amazing chat. And actually, your second point on silver lining, I really like it. Not always what you want. So I'm going to have to really, I reflect a lot. So I'm going to really think about that, because it's, COVID actually has shown me a lot. Because the morning that it happened, I'm from a family of 12. So I have 8 brothers. So I feel really comfortable with men. And I have 2 sisters, and 1 sister passed over. So 2 of my sisters actually are looking after my mother in a nursing home in Southern Ontario. I phoned and I said, I text, can I help? And my 1 sister came right back at me and said, no, Marie, we don't need your help. I really had to go to a really, really calm place, all of that, because it was so out of my hands. So the next point I have is, when you went into positive relationships with others, I really went and reflected, okay, this is not about me. So the last 12 years, it was all about me. And I really realized that, okay, what is it that I'm not paying attention to about them? So it's been a blessing in disguise, because it's actually every time you know, I have a brother with mental illness. I have, you know, I have a lot of stuff going on. Every time something happens, I go, wow, that's really like, wow. And then I go, okay, what's it for me? What do I learn from it? And then how do I go forward?
Right.
So it's, you know, actually, I think I can sit around the campfire with you, Jason.
Yeah, let's do it. S'mores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I know I really feel comfortable with men, and that's where I really should be working with, because it's the tough conversations that they need in order to bring, because we both can grow. Like, that's what happened in my own marriage, is that I was getting sick 12 years ago from the Maritimes coming up here. And I basically said to my husband, you know, I said, I can't waltz on the dance floor anymore. So I said to myself, I'm going to go back on that dance floor. And then it's an analogy. I'm going to go on the dance floor and I'm going to foxtrot. And if he comes, he comes. If he doesn't come, he doesn't come. But he had to grow too. I had to grow my own way. That's when a relationship really starts moving forward. So
Right.
I don't know. It's just, it's remarkable. It's remarkable what's coming out of this COVID. You know, it's just, there's so much love coming. There's just so much, you know, you even look around, I go down Ottawa Pathway and people laugh and smile. And just like you're saying, a smile. And I'll be thinking about that too. How often do I really smile at people? So anyways, thank you, Jason. I really could speak to you for a long, long time.
Well, feel free to reach out. I'm sure you'll have my contact information. And I think what you said is also really profound, is that I don't ever watch the news, and I got slipped into it once when I was watching YouTube during the riots, and there was a live feed, and I'm like, oh, I gotta see what's happening, you know? And Don Lemon, who is a commentator on CNN, he tends to make everything political, and I know this from forever ago, opposed to kind of just telling a story, which is what I would, if news is just telling stories about people, that would be a really fantastic thing. That's what it used to be about. Now there's really no stories, there's just narratives. And he was basically calling out Trump. And he said something along the lines is that the nation needs hope right now. The nation needs love. The nation needs compassion. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, Don Lemon, like, you're an idiot. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why. And it comes from a good place, I guess. I don't know. That's what you say, right? It comes from a good place. Is that...
Oh, man, you're just like one of my young brothers, Jason.
Why are you expecting Trump to be anything other than what Trump is? That makes you silly, right? Trump is who Trump is. You just have to find a way to celebrate his strengths. You have to kind of pass on the weaknesses. And at the end of the day, he's just their president. So it's not going to do any favors to condemn him and make him miserable and go against the grain, opposed to just maybe take some time just not to put something on social media, maybe to not have that conversations with your friends, and maybe just to take a couple of minutes to reflect and just throw out some good energy to Donald Trump. He's not going to take it, but at least you know you're doing you, right? And I think we spent a little bit more time, again, just empathy. I don't know how difficult it is to run a presidency. Obviously, he finds it more difficult than most, but it's just the way that it is. So to meet people where they are, and to understand that people are doing the best they can with the tools that they have at the time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
My next question, but we won't go. My next question is empathy and compassion is what, and that could be like an hour or 2 hour conversation. But to me, it's like, I've really learned about what compassion is during this time, you know? But anyways, I could go on and on. I'm sorry.
All right. Look for me on Facebook. I'm always on there.
Okay. I will.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. We'll be sharing it and making sure that people know where you're at. Cause I tell you, I was listening to your podcast and I love what you're talking about.
I just wanted to point out, Jason, it's interesting that you talked about your book and the first chapter being about smiling. And this is one. So number one, I have never thought that I could ever write a book, number one. But in the past few months, I've had it come up several times that I should write a book. And so I'm trying to figure out what to write about. And when you talked about your first chapter being about smiling, that is exactly what I try and practice and preach on my daily videos. And I tell people all the time, you know, like I go out and I purposely try to count how many people smile back, because I just want to be nice and share a smile. And it's just sad to me that people don't even look at you, you know? Yeah. So I'm like, anytime I have a chance to smile at somebody, I do it, and I'm so grateful when they smile back. And so I'm like, wow, maybe I could start my book like that too. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. The simplest things have the biggest impact on people. That I guess my lesson is that I'm realizing that the smallest things that I do and I practice are not necessarily common anymore. And so it's a good thing to be able to share that and encourage people to do that. So thank you for that.
And for you all to give yourselves a huge round of applause as well, is that I find that, and I do this to myself constantly, is being far too critical of where I'm at sometimes, not realizing how far I've come to right now. And the common sense stuff that we think, oh, well, yeah, that's easy to do. So many people aren't doing these easy things. Right. So to give yourself a lot more credit than you probably give yourself for how far advanced that you are. Because I guarantee you, like Penny, I could have this conversation with 100 people and there's not one other person that's counting how many times they smile at another person. So I think that's a wonderful practice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with us, Jason. We're really grateful. And thanks for joining us and saying yes.
No problem.